Welcome to today's episode of the Group X podcast. I'm your host, Tony Zanardo. Today, I'll be talking to Nathan White, trainer and presenter in body attack and body balance for Les Mills Asia Pacific. Believe in the reason you are there. We discuss the pivotal moment as instructors when we realise it's not about us, it's about them. The members who turn up week in, week out, for whatever reason, it's entirely about them. So grab your favourite beverage, sit back, and enjoy this episode. Nathan, welcome to the Group X podcast, mate. It is good to see you.
Great to see you too, Tony.
Hey, let's just kick it right off, right from the word go. Now, I want you to tell us a bit about you and how you got into the fitness industry. Where does your journey start?
My journey started when I finished up university. If you haven't met me before, I have multiple lives and jobs. In my full-time role, I work as a pilot in the Royal Australian Air Force. And when I started my Group X journey, I was actually at the Australian Defence Force Academy, studying at university. And we had really structured training there. Once it got to the end of my degree, that structured training finished. And I was basically on my own as to how I would, continue to exercise. And I really enjoyed sport as a teenager and as a kid, but what I struggled with once I left structured training was I went to the weights room and I just didn't feel like I belonged. Like I particularly being in defence, I was surrounded by people who knew what they were doing, and I had no idea what I was doing in the weights room. I didn't really love running. I liked sports that gave me the opportunity to be a part of a team, and that, they're seasonal, right? Yeah. So I went down to Fitness First Deacon, actually, because my friend had told me about this class that he taught. He was a body pump instructor. I was like, that sounds interesting, a set workout to music, a group environment. And I went and I did a class at Fitness First Deacon, and I was a fresh-faced 18, 19-year-old. And I think we might have missed the body pump, but I rolled into a class called Body Step, and Dion Ware was the instructor.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah. And I was like, I had a performance background. I did theatre in high school and in university. And so I was like, okay, it's aerobics on a step. That sounds fun. Let's have a go. And I just loved it. I was like, oh my God, this is camp to start with.
Yeah.
Super fun, high energy. There's this, the room was packed. Dion was fantastic. And so I just kept going back, and I tried body attack, and I did, a 16-year-old Jamie Winbanks class.
Yep.
If anyone knows Jamie. And Adam, he's been around for the longest time. And I just was like, this is my place. I loved it. I got really fit. I felt like I was celebrated for moving in a way that felt great.
Yep. Yep.
And so I left Canberra and I went to Tamworth to kick off some flying training as a pilot. And so what I did is I sought out a local gym, and they had a timetable and great instructors. Plus Fitness in Tamworth it was.
Oh, wow. Yep.
After about 5 months of, doing pump, attack and step there, the club manager was like, Nathan, you move really well. Have you ever thought about being an instructor? And he, performance background, I was like, really? I move great? Yeah. Stop it. Keep going.
Tell me more.
I was like, oh, thank you. Really? Did I look great? Like, I think I look great. It's funny, and that led in, and we'll get to it, but that led into the type of instructor I was when I first started.
Yep.
Because I thought it was all about performance, and it was all about me.
Well, it
So I
was.
ended
It
up doing
was
my
back
body
then.
step training. I lived in Tamworth and I drove to Brisbane for one weekend, and it was Karen Russell,
Yep.
actually. I know Karen's been on this pod. Um, and I, that was back when day one and two, you got an outcome of um, pass or reset, or like pass with a mentor
Yep.
or pass
Past the shadow.
um, past a shadow, right?
Yep.
And so, and we also got the pack like when we arrived. So we basically got the pack of your choreography notes and your music. Um, and we kicked off this training where we did the masterclass. And thankfully, I had been participating. So I knew the release, or at least I participated in the release. And clearly there's a massive difference. um, but I had an awareness of the release, and I think that was so important because we didn't used to get the music until the
The
day,
day. Yeah.
uh,
Yep.
and and you were given a track on day one that you had to present twice on day two, and you got feedback. So, and then it was obviously you kick off you know, now we call it the 8 week journey.
Yep.
Your journey to certification followed it. So look, I rocked up and I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I just loved it. I had been so used to kind of structured training by being in the Defence Force, and the Les Mills training packages are just like, structured training on steroids with music and high energy trainers. Like I was in heaven.
Yep.
And had a really fun group, and like I did well. Karen told me, I still remember my like day two, feedback form,
Yep.
and
Yep.
she she said you're going to be a star, and drew a little star. And it's funny how much you remember your first training. I trained on Body Step 69, which had the Candyman Speed Step
Yep.
by Christina Aguilera.
Yep.
Thankfully, I didn't get that track because I would have probably tripped, but also like, I probably wouldn't have learnt. Um, I would have been too dancey, and I needed a track that made me a body stepper. So I got the
Yep.
track 9, and it was high energy and it was great.
Yep.
But I just yeah, I loved body step, and after that training, it was so funny. Like I did my gel, and back then gel was like a 2-page quiz. I remember.
Yes.
I remember you had to write down what you would do if the sound system failed, and you also had to script a track introduction and a class introduction. And it's funny these days, the gel is like, and you have to create a work health and safety plan for a gym environment, and it's almost like it feels like a diploma these
Yeah.
days.
Yep.
Lots of recorded videos and interviews and stuff. So anyway, I got through the gel when it was a walk in the park, and all I needed to do was certify. And I remember learning the body set release quite quickly, and and then I was like, oh, now I need to film. And the instructors there were, I don't know, they were a bit like they had a really strong ownership of their class. And I
Yep.
reached out to some instructors and said, hey, I'd love to like come and teach with you or film. And they're like, oh, wait till you get your certification. They had this really strong sense of, well, you've got to be certified to teach at our club. I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure how I'm going to
Uh,
get certified if I
yes.
can't come and teach.
Exactly.
So
How can I
I,
certify if I can't team teach with
right.
anybody? Yeah.
And so I rehearsed that release, and I practiced and practiced. And I'm like, I'm going to get one opportunity. And when it's ready, like, I just need to take it. So anyway, the planets aligned, an instructor got sick and no one was available. And the club manager reached out to me, and this is so illegal, today. But he was like, Nathan, we're so desperate. There's a body step. It's Saturday. It's 4:30 p.m. This is like Saturday morning or something ridiculous. And he's like, we need your help. And so I'm like, I am so ready for this. I've been learning my release. I am, I'm good to go. And I'm like, might be my one shot to certify. So I set up a camera, and it was the first class I ever taught, and I filmed it. And like, there were errors. In fact, in track 4, I fell off the step.
Sorry.
No, but it was like it was quite dynamic. I was jumping, and it slipped. Like it was one of those stages that has carpet on it,
Yes.
and all the instructors out
Yep.
there would be rolling their eyes or like convulsing with some PTSD. I'm sure of it, because particularly body step, and it was the old Reebok step as well, so like super slippery. If
Yeah.
particularly if you jump, and I was an inexperienced instructor, and I was ready to, jump to the moon, like I remember Jamie Wingbank being able to do as a baby, and I had so much energy, and I didn't know how to control it, and so yeah, the step slipped, and I didn't injure myself. I kind of landed and just kept going. Right, you just keep going,
Yep.
and I got through. I was like, this might be my only shot. I'm going to just submit. And I remember, the certification feedback was like, hey, you fell. We've really got to demonstrate safe movement. And I got all the feedback, but I got certified. It was like amazing. So like I did something. You know what? I need to find that DVD and just play it, and just have a look at how horrendous I was.
We all start somewhere, man. We all start somewhere.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So look, that kicked off the journey, and I moved to Melbourne pretty much a month after that. I had to wait for my next pilot course in Perth, and I spent 6 months living and teaching in Melbourne. I met Louisa, I met Dean Lightbody and Kirsty, and then that's when I kind of was like, oh wow, like this is. I remember my first workshop in Melbourne, and Kirst, pointed me out in the body attack masterclass, and I think she corrected my jumping jacks. It's so funny what you remember, right? Like,
Yep.
there's all these really formative moments throughout your career that you're like, I remember Kirsty corrected my jumping jacks, and my jacks have been, immaculate ever since.
Yes. All it takes is someone in a position like that to turn around and say something to you. And
Right.
it sticks, doesn't it? You just go, cool, okay, yep, got that. Thanks. Yep.
I think my jumping jacks were more like a squat jack. And she's like, you don't need to go so deep, Nathan. And it's so funny that like, that was, my goodness, that was like 13 years ago, and I still remember. But yeah, I fell in love with the Les Mills community in Melbourne, because the big workshop environment, right? That's back in the days of the supers, and it was in like this community centre down in Albert Park. I can't remember the actual facility, but I was just wowed by 200 instructors or something like that, and that was Body Attack 61.
Wow.
Which was well, a long time ago. It was the Hairspray release for the Body Attack instructors out there.
Yep.
And I ended up moving to Perth and signing up for my Body Attack module because of that release.
Oh wow.
And, so I trained on Body Attack 61 after teaching step for about 6 months.
Yep.
And so being over west, and new instructors to meet, and new clubs to figure out where the best Group X culture is. And it's funny, after living in about 5 or 6 cities, there's a bit of a formula.
Yep.
How to find the clubs with the great culture, you try a bit, and you're like, oh, you figure out where the presenters teach, and then it's not always the clubs that they teach at, because sometimes the presenters have an amazing class in an average club. Sometimes it takes you a few goes to figure out the club with the best culture.
Yep.
But lived in Perth for a year, and Tanya Sibon Burke actually trained me in Body Attack, and I kind of became a cardio bunny, obviously, but
Yep.
step, attack, um, and I loved that. I loved those programs and how they made me feel, and that still kind of sustains me today. Right? There's nothing like uh, a big body attack class, in terms of like wow factor and the group X effect. Like, don't get me wrong, an entire room deadlifting in perfect time is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really hard to find that.
Yeah. Isn't that so true? Isn't
You
that
know
so
what?
true? Wow.
It's so hard to find that. So
Yeah.
there's something about attack and step that just create this, right club, right participants,
Yes.
right sound system,
Yep.
and I think that I figured that out pretty early because group exercise was a passion for me and a casual job. Um, I chased what I loved,
Yep.
so I chased the clubs that had the best culture and the best instructors and the best sound systems, because that's the foundation of what makes the workout amazing.
Yeah.
It's funny we say like it's just aerobics, right? We're just moving to music, but there's a big difference between a tinny, shitty system. I probably can't swear. My apologies.
No, we can. We can say whatever we want on here. It's all
Really?
Yes.
A tinny, shitty
Yep.
system. There's a big difference between that and the studios that really invest in a great sound system to really support their group exercise experience. And I tell you what, as an instructor that, teaches for the love, don't get me wrong, the additional financial component is
The $2.50 per class. Yep.
we get paid $3.30 these days.
Oh wow, geez. Yeah, well, I'm talking after tax, so
Yes. No, like that. You chase the environment that is gonna create, that life-changing experience. That's what the participants want.
This is the Group X podcast.
And don't get me wrong, there are some participants that'll turn up to, they'll turn up to a low volume, low energy, low
Yes.
skill
Yep.
instructor, but that they're not the environments that make people addicted
Yeah.
to what we do,
Yeah.
right?
Just back when you were talking about Plus Fitness in Tamworth, the first time I ever went into that club, I saw, I'm going to say, I think it was a body pump class being taught. Now, the sound system in that studio was amazing. They had massive Bose speakers. There was 4 of them from memory around the room. I remember pulling up out the front in the car and I just went, wow. Yeah, talk about the experience. And I know that it's a regional little town, Tamworth. There's I think there's 3 gyms in town. I think there's only 2 there now, potentially, if I'm right. But back then, that sound system was absolutely amazing. And I knew from when I parked the car, well, before I even had my meeting and I walked in, you could tell there was energy in that space. And it came down to atmosphere that was in there, the people that were in there, obviously, but also the sound quality, as you said, needs to be on par. You can't go into a studio, and studios need to look at that these days and assess their room. If their group X attendance isn't well, start from the ground. Have a look at your flooring. If you've got, as you said, if you've got carpet on the stage, get rid of it. I hope there's still no clubs out there with carpet from 20 years ago on their stage, because God, no, you do not want to lie down doing any sort of yoga, Pilates, balance, or anything like that, or even core. You do not want to lie down on mank. So no, piss that off.
You can already smell it. Like,
but at the same time, invest in decent equipment, as well as sound equipment as well. It needs to be spot on. The mic needs to be okay. The sound, you don't want that tinny, or you don't want just that mid-range. You need to have the full range of the spectrum in sound for it to sound decent. And that's
100%.
one thing that I do appreciate that they had right out there.
It was a committed club owner. I think it wasn't his first rodeo, and he did what great clubs do. He invested in the studio. He created an exceptional team, and they really supported each other. They loved the programs, and then the Group X culture just followed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone in the town would flock, or everyone in the town that knew about Group X would flock to the classes, and it was well beyond what you'd expect from a country town, because they created something that was just you couldn't deliver that, or you couldn't get that work out on your own if you just turn up to an I don't want to name brands to a no one to a gym that doesn't offer the full experience.
Yes. Yeah. Nicely worded, by the way. Now, hey, take me back to your first class. Now, your first class was obviously the filming experience, which you explained that. Did you get a class on the timetable at Plus Fitness, or did you, shortly after that, were you off to Melbourne?
I think I had like 2 or 3 weeks left in Tamworth. So I didn't get a class on the timetable, but when I rolled into Melbourne, I feel like I can't remember whether I reached out to Karen, to get some recommendations on gyms in Melbourne, and I was that brave little, Les Mills trainee that was like, very happy to just reach out to a presenter and be like, where are your classes? And I'm going to come and participate and be a groupie.
Yeah. We love groupies. We love groupies.
But, like chase the best class, right? Yeah. Wherever you live. Go and find someone that inspires you, and because I knew that I had to grow and develop, and I'm like, well, why not just find the best and learn from them? And and that's where I met Dean and Kirst, and I thankfully, like, nothing's changed. They were desperate for Body Step instructors, and they ran an audition, and they put me onto the books like immediately. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't amazing. I think I was just different. Like, I had a passion for the program. Being a boy on a Body Step is different as well.
Yep.
It's like, there's a level of just having a point of difference, and kind of selling what that is can really pack a room. And I just started teaching, and I got picked up at a couple of clubs where Dean and Kirst were teaching. I feel like that club group has changed its name now, but there are a number. I picked up some classes in the inner south east of Melbourne. I had a permanent for a few months, and then I got a permanent at South Melbourne as well. And then, I knew that my tenure was short there. So I kind of gave that indication to club managers. I was like, look, I'm not here forever, but I'd love to be able to commit to, the time that I have here. And I did a lot of covers, and it's where I learned like how much to invest in traveling for covers. Like, I think I agreed to some covers out in the boondocks, and, after fearing for my life one day, I was like, this isn't worth it, if you can't get a tram there in Melbourne, it's not worth going to do the cover.
Brilliant.
So look, and I had a busy full-time job as well, so I guess I became a bit selective about the classes that I would attend and cover.
Yep.
But it's funny. It was anything, you get certified, and it's just a license to learn, right? And I learnt. I started learning back releases and seeing what worked. And it's funny, the music that I loved didn't always resonate in the clubs that I taught at.
Yep.
And then some of the tracks that I was like, oh, this is a bit dull. They just go off, and actually it was Chris Hutton that taught me to teach entire releases. Like, mixing is great, and I don't discourage anyone to do that. But if you always do mixes of tracks that you love, whilst you'll always teach them well, there might be tracks that are out there that you might not pick for your mix, but they're a great track.
Yep.
And the music's awesome.
Yep.
It might not suit your immediate taste, but someone's going to love it. And I remember when Chris told me that, I was like, that's actually, it's almost like some of the news presenters that have a set wardrobe, or like some of the big CEOs of Silicon Valley, they don't have wardrobes. They literally wear the same thing every day.
Yep.
You know, if you've ever found yourself like pining over or like stressing about your mix for that particular class, I tell you what can take the stress out of it. Just do an entire release.
Yep.
It's set.
Choose one. Yeah, go that. Yep.
It's set. It's well balanced with the choreography.
Yeah.
It's actually well balanced with the music, because guess what? Some really, really talented people put a lot of energy into doing they put a lot of effort into putting it together at the time. And even if it's a few years old, it's still a holistic product. A lot of the time the tracks lend themselves to each other. They balance well, they contrast with each other. And even if you don't love every track, well, maybe that's great, because if you just put bangers on every single track, like sometimes that can be exhausting as well.
100%.
If your warm-up is a banger and then track 2 is a banger, it's like everyone's exhausted, so they don't have any space for the next banger.
Not only that, they expect that level every time you teach.
Totally.
And you can't keep that up forever.
Totally.
You've got to put some rubbish tracks in there every now and then to be able to go, yeah, okay, that was a bit crap, but you know what? We got through it. We did it. It was still a workout. We took something out of it. I enjoyed doing that back when I was teaching. Grab some of the older tracks that I would hate and put them all together, and it's almost like the worst of. But it got me teaching in a different way.
Yeah,
I would really have to sit down and go over the choreo again and go, oh, okay, yeah, that was that cool. But try and find those bits in those tracks that made that track, or understand why that track was chosen from the program directors in the first place, and use it. Yep. Great that they all knew all the good ones. They wanted all the big ones. Yeah, all that kind of. But every so often, do a worst of. do something different, because it gets you out of your comfort zone and takes you to a different level when you. I know that sounds weird. I can tell the look on your faces.
That's a psychopath, Tony. Yeah. Like, I'm going to do a worst of playlist.
Yeah. For those playing along at home, the facial that Nathan just gave me then was like, what are you talking about?
No, it's a great message though. Like, obviously it's the full scale right of what I'm trying to say here. And the tracks that you don't absolutely love, probably give a bit of space in your class for the tracks that do shine. And it's okay for there to be, a track that's just, there's training outcomes in there. It may not be a memorable track, but that's okay too. It actually gives space for the big tracks to be even more impressive and, to have that, bigger wow factor.
I'll give you a challenge. The next class you teach, do the worst of.
I will take requests from any of you for the worst of body attack.
And then the following week, go do the best of and watch them. Those members will be hanging off every word you're saying, because they're like, oh, that's much better. Thank you. This is the Group X podcast. Hey, talk to me about your module training that you went on with Karen for STEP. Take me back there for a minute, and can you remember walking in on day one and what you felt, what you were? Was the experience different to what you'd anticipated? How can you give us a little bit about that? How was that experience for you?
I didn't really have any understanding of what the behind the scenes engine room was of Les Mills. I saw the product, and that was the instructors. And I was really fortunate to be a participant at Fitness First Deakin back in 2006. And don't get me wrong, it's amazing today. It's still the birthplace of Body Pump in Australia, which is an amazing title. So, but I didn't know what the behind the scenes engine room was, and so I guess leaning into that, and that was back when we would do the welcome where we would welcome each other with the nose press.
The hungy. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh my God, have I joined a cult?
Yep.
and even today, I'm like, no, yes, I did join a cult.
We are all
what
disciples.
An amazing cult, you know. Yeah, so look, Karen's a master, right? And she was at the top of her game back then. Still, you know, she's been a leader in the industry for 2 decades, right?
Yep.
So, or more, I think. And the training experience, you know, it kind of brought together all of these people that would never really come across each other. And that I found really like warming, and you know, particularly because we were undergoing a journey together for something that we loved. So kind of every single challenge. It's so funny. I remember kind of gelling with 1 or 2 people. There was a woman, Sasha, that was Body Attack trained already. And I think I connected with her quite quickly because I was picking up the module content really fast.
Yep.
And when we did our first presentation, you know, you saw the people that got it, and you saw the people that needed a bit more time. And so Sasha and I kind of, you know, connected quickly because, well, maybe it was because she had the Candyman song by Christina Aguilera. And I was jealous, right? So,
I want that song.
And no, look, I remember gelling with her. I remember the presentations. I remember the room. I don't actually remember the content.
Yep.
It's so interesting. I remember the things that Karen taught us, and I remember the Body Step Challenge. I remember the technique session, and I remember practicing it that night. And I remember learning my choreography that night as well. But it's so, the first module you do is such a blur.
Yeah, so true.
You don't really absorb what's happening. You're kind of holding on for dear life. You're in culture shock. I wasn't overwhelmed. I remember feeling really kind of confident, and I was picking up the content well. I thankfully, because of my performing background, like the choreography didn't take long for me to pick up.
Yep.
And so I was really focused on, you know, the type of instructor that I wanted to be. And I was like, I'm going to be a visual cueing master, and I'm never going to miss a pre-cue, you know. And I just remember thinking like about the type of instructor I wanted to be, which is nothing like the instructor I've become.
Yep.
With 14 experience now, but like it was a blur, you know, but there are moments that you really reflect back on that you just kind of will never forget. Like I remember that welcome, and I remember Karen, and I remember the technique session, and I remember the room, like we were at Jindalee.
Yep.
It was a Fernwood. I actually felt like I was about to be banished or like taken out by security. Like it was hard enough being a Body Step boy, let alone doing my training at a Fernwood. So yeah, look, I just find it fascinating that your first training is such a blur.
Yep.
The things that you remember are really the connection, like your connection to the trainer, connection to the people in the module that you kind of gel with as well. And you know what? I should reach out to those people. I've reached out to Karen recently, but you know, it was so long ago. I just don't know where all those people are and what they're doing.
Yeah. Can you recall the first couple of months of you teaching? And you mentioned that you've been teaching for 14 odd years now, and you are a different instructor now than what you were then or what you wanted to be. And I asked this question because I had a conversation with one of my guests recently with regards to the first 3 or 4 months. It's all about us as instructors. It's all about me. Look at me. Check me out. Look what I'm doing. Look at this. Look, how good was that? Yeah. So at the end of class, you love the fact that someone came up to you and said, "Oh, that was great," because you're like, "Yeah, it was." I was awesome. Thanks for coming. That type of thing.
I was the epitome of that. Like, I was like, it was all about me, and particularly in body step, I was hunting for back releases.
Yep.
I wanted to find the most superstar tracks to be the most rock starry superstar.
Yep.
And I was changing my mix every class. Like, just get the volume of tracks to see what will wow them the most. And I was like, it's so funny thinking about that. And don't get me wrong, I was like desperate to learn a whole bunch of choreography so that I could, have a bit of variety in my classes. But really what I would have benefited from was to just teach one mix for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep. And look, I tell you what was really good for me when I was in Melbourne and teaching just body step, but I was put on a timetable of a brand new club, no established Group X culture. And some of the classes I taught had 2 or 3 or 4 people.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, like I was planning a show. and this is
there's 3 people.
There's 3 of us.
Yep.
Yeah. And I really had to check myself. And you know what? I don't think I got it back then. I remember feeling disappointed at the numbers. And it's like, oh mate, like it's a brand new club. Like you've got to grow this from scratch.
Yeah.
You've got to get these 2 people to tell their friends and bring friends, and you've got to get them to tell their friends, and then the club will grow over time. It's a marathon.
Yep.
And the way you connect with the members as well is a long-term thing as well.
Yep.
You can't just be like, well, if I wow them this week, then they'll stick with me forever.
Yeah.
But that's what I thought. I was like, Karen told me I'm a superstar, so I'm gonna perform like I'm a superstar every class. So I need a new mix. I thought that I was like, I don't know, a touring rock band, and it's so interesting, like how that was my focus. Like it was all about me, right? It took me a long time, and it wasn't until I was teaching in Sydney actually, and I had my own, I had long-term permanent classes, and I had diverse participant bases. I taught at a club called Balmain Fitness.
Yep. For
quite a while actually. There was one of the first clubs that I started when I moved to Sydney, and I had everybody, from Michelle Bridges to 70-something-year-old men and women doing my class, and it was like this moment that happened. This man came up to me, and he was elderly. He was in his 70s, and he told me, Nathan, all of my friends are on walking frames, and I'm not, and it's your class that keeps me off the frame. And I almost cried. I was like, oh my God. And it really struck me. I was like, this isn't about me. Oh my God, what have I been doing?
Yeah. It's moments like that make us realize why we do what we do.
Totally. That's a massive turning point in my life, was that moment. And, I was young, dumb and stupid and had a massive ego. And it was moments like that really grounded me, and then I had to reinvent myself. I was like, okay, well, I know how to be showy and an idiot and dance around on stage, but can I really make people like commit to this for life? And I had to really think about, well, what do I need to adapt class by class to make it about them, you know, and then also get out of my own, like when you're thinking about the performance all the time, there's no authenticity either. And I actually had to kind of I had to do the training from scratch.
Yep.
Like, be like, oh, well, wait, if I change the perspective and the lens, that it's not about me. Well, why are we learning the choreography? And why do I have to have strong technique? It's not to look great,
Yep.
even though that's impressive. But what about them? Why do they need me to have great technique? My coaching, it's not about having a zippy little line, you know. Actually, what's the best outcome for them in coaching? And then connection. I was like, well, I connect, you know, I connect to the music and I say, you know, hey there, great pivot turn, you know, that's connection, box ticked, you know. And I was like, oh God, like, actually, no, you have to believe in the reason that you're there to help them.
Yeah. This is the Group X podcast. I think that's a good moment when you realize it's not about you, it's about them.
100%.
And as you're talking about now, that adjustment you need to make in yourself once you have that realization moment of going, oh wow, this has been all around me, all about me for quite some time now. And Tony, it doesn't actually need to be about you. It needs to be about the people that are coming. They're coming for you, but it's not about you. It's actually about them. And they come for whatever reason. It could be, you know, the lady sitting down the back that's the only time she gets away from her family. You know, she's got 3 kids at home or whatever the situation may be. That hour that she's in your class is just about her. So connect with her in that way and let her have her moment in your class. If she's doing something a little bit wrong, it doesn't matter. Is it safe? Yes, it is. Is she going to hurt herself? No, she's not. If she is, you'll say something to correct her, which is a way of connecting to her. But it's when you have that full moment, that mental moment where you realize, wow, I'm doing this and the result is bigger than me.
100%. You know, and I was so committed to the cult, right? I was like, well, I'm going to change the world because I'm, you know, because I'm a star. Karen told me. It wasn't until I went through this, you know, real understanding, and it actually took me years to really unpick it.
Yep.
And I think actually, you know, all trainers and presenters and experienced instructors, you have to constantly unpick it as well. You know, it's like there's a lot of attention and expectation associated with being a trainer and presenter, and you've still got to ground yourself and be like, well, why are we here? It's about creating a bigger footprint, you know, inspiring instructors to be better in their clubs. Because if we don't have instructors inspiring regular people in clubs, we don't have a program.
Yeah.
You know, we can't do workshops if the instructors don't turn up because they've got a club to go home to.
Yep.
And I think that's really important part of being a presenter and trainer, as well as having your own classes and like not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. Yep. Like the most amazing classes you can do are not workshop classes.
Yeah.
Workshops are actually really hard work.
Yeah. No, it's 100%.
Club classes?
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
You showing up for your club classes, connecting with real people, teaching, you know, a class that's not a workshop class. It's a real class for real people. And being able to encourage them to move in a way that feels great.
Yep.
Well, that's what we all should be doing more of.
Yeah.
You know.
I think there's two different styles of teaching. There's an instructor that teaches to participants, and there's a trainer presenter that teaches to other instructors. Now, as a trainer and presenter, I believe you have to have the two different skill sets, because as you said, you've still got your Tuesday night class that you teach, your Monday morning class, wherever it is, you still teach to participants.
Mm.
But when you teach to instructors, you've got to bring it to a different level of education for them to understand. The thing that I believe that a lot of instructors don't get is the way you teach when you're on stage as a trainer and presenter, the way you're teaching to them isn't the way they go and teach to members. It's different. They've got to bring in their personality, their skill set from what they've learnt from the education you've given them, and go and make sure that they deliver in the essence of the program, but them. Because I mean, zero disrespect when I say this, I wouldn't want to go to someone else's class when they're trying to be Nathan. Because they can't be Nathan, because only Nathan can be Nathan. Yeah. If Tony tries to be, if Tony tries to be Nathan, Tony's gonna. If Tony tries to be Nathan, Tony's gonna look like a dick. So Tony, don't teach like Nathan. Teach like you. Take some of the things that Nathan's taught you from teaching, but connect to the people that are in front of you. And I think that's a lot of, as I said, a lot of instructors don't really get that. They don't really grasp that. And I'll say that it's also back from the education resources we used to get back in the day that were filmed in Auckland Studio One, that were the trainer and presenter team from New Zealand were giving us an education resource. Mm-hmm. Now that has changed these days, as we know. That education resource is still a bit there, but it's primarily targeted at Les Mills On Demand or Les Mills Plus, whatever it's called. So it is a little bit different, but it still gives instructors enough for what they need within the program. But it's having that awareness that there's two different types of instructing that goes on in there.
Absolutely. There's actually a few layers of classes that we can do there. You're right, the masterclass, that product is a resource for all of us, but also it meets a market for on demand. And that it also, the energy is different when you're connecting to camera as well. When you're connecting, you can notice the difference between the filmings that have happened, in that live camera environment with just the presenters, and then a big group environment. The energy is different.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, we want to inspire instructors when we do workshops, but we've actually received recent feedback that instructors don't want a class that they can see on the masterclass. So they don't want us to deliver a workshop style class. They actually want to see the presenters do a club style class.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow.
The way that and the way that we approach that is, well, we've got to give them education about what's fun and different about this release.
Yeah.
What are some options that they can do in that particular release, to kind of bring out parts of the release that they can't find on the masterclass. So something that we talk about in the team is to really try to never replicate the
I like that a lot, because it's one, it's listening to what our instructors are after, but it's 100% accurate, because why replicate what's on the DVD?
100%.
I won't go to a workshop. I'll just sit at home and watch it, because if you're going to just do what they're doing, I'll just watch it in the comfort of my own home with my packet of chips and my feet up, mug boots on, and I'm good. If I come to a workshop, I want something more, and I really appreciate that the business is looking at that in that way, because it is what it's about. It's about, hey, this is the interpretation of what this release is. This is a way you can do it. This is the way you deliver it. Or as you said, here are some options which you can throw out to give them something a little bit more than the 50-minute or 1 hour DVD that they're going to be able to. Not DVD
so a lot
anymore.
of the team that I have spoken to, that they're not. There's no scripting. We're planning a whole bunch of things that we can throw into the masterclass at workshops. But it's all about what we see and feel on the day.
Yep.
And the only way that we can be prepared to do that is to really know the release inside out.
Yep.
So that on the day, actually, we can just be there with them in that moment.
Yeah.
And enjoy that.
Yeah.
Teach to that. Actually both Braden and Inga so they're the coaches for Body Balance and Body Attack, of which I'm on the team for, and they're both massive in that. Come to workshop prepared, to be in the moment. Don't come prepared with a preordained script and plan that you just execute. Actually be ready for what you see.
Yeah.
And that's the fun, right? That's what makes live Group X classes amazing, is not that you're like, I think if I interrupt the presenter, I might get them off track. Actually, no, like we thrive off the connection.
Yeah, the interaction. Yeah.
Interaction, right? We want to see that involvement. We want to see your, stupid grinning face because you love our programs, because we do too. You know, we wouldn't be there if we didn't love it as well. And so that's what the team's doing. They're coming to workshop so ready to just be there with you, and that's what we want.
Yeah. On that, how did the opportunity come up for you to join the trainer presenter team?
So it was 2018, and so all Aim to Elite Outcomes were invited to audition for a pathway that Amanda in Head of People and Culture had developed with the rest of the business, in order to, because we had this really strong instructor pathway up to Aim 2, and then there appeared to be a bit of a delta between Aim to Elite Outcomes and then people who were ready for the team.
Yep.
So they wanted to create strong mentoring pathways, and they said that, hey, like, why don't we create this squad where, they participate in workshops, they are often on the stage for workshops, they can get the assistance of our most experienced trainers, and develop towards being a presenter. And as soon as a spot opens up, well, we've got this ready workforce that have been looked at by us, developed by us, and we're taking them from the Aim to Elite upwards and onwards. A lot of stuff happened, I think, following 2018. So I ended up, being invited to audition. I auditioned for Body Attack only. I think I was teaching it actively at the time, and I felt it was my strongest program, so I wanted to put myself forward for my strongest program.
Yep.
And, there was 2 phases. Initially, a video submission of a track, and then a live audition with a bunch of other people who had got through the video audition as well. And that had Amanda there, and actually Jamie Winbank.
Yep.
He just keeps coming back. He's a good friend of mine, so we'll appreciate the shout out. And so they were looking to see if you, in the live environment, had the potential to go to the presenter boot camp. Now we've changed this pathway a lot today, but the presenter boot camp remains, and it's an amazing weekend with experienced trainers. They deliver some content which really kind of situates you about, how to be a fitness leader and what are some skills in the workshop environment to, create that unforgettable experience.
Yep.
And I ended up, I wasn't available for the Sydney one, which would have been the closest. And I went to Brisbane, which was amazing because I got to meet a whole bunch of incredible instructors that I'm, mostly on the team with now. And, they're really amazing friends and peers, because we went through that boot camp together. And so it was a weekend of challenge and opportunity, and we just were all kind of behind each other, and that felt amazing.
Yep.
So Amanda and Jacko ran that boot camp in Brisbane, and I got selected for the squad following that boot camp, and jumped onto the Body Attack squad. So at the time, I was assigned to, your wife Rach.
Who?
And for those of the listeners that don't know me, Rach has been a long-term friend of mine and one of my closest friends, and so that was really interesting to be coached and mentored by a close friend. And I tell you what, she did not hold back. For those of you who have done modules and training with Rach, you'll know her full potential, and I experienced it too. So Rach really, really honed in on a few things and it kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier about, doing it, figuring out your why. Yep. And whilst I had a good idea about why I had committed to being a group fitness instructor for life, I hadn't figured out how to translate that into my teaching.
Yep.
And so when I hit the squad and I, was ticking all the boxes, but that ended up being part of the issue. And Rach helped me unpack box ticking and actually kind of believe what I was saying. And a big part of that journey for me was, like learning a level of self-belief. I think that for the longest time I had surrounded myself, with presenters as mentors, and I was looking up to them like, I really want to be that. I want to do that and become them. I didn't quite realize that I was so desperate to become them that I didn't really lean into the parts of myself that I should amplify, and the parts of myself that made me me.
Yep.
And really kind of believing that my own voice was valid, that I could speak with authenticity and truth and people would listen and want to turn up. I was like, I thought I had to be someone that I wasn't, because I wasn't a presenter. So I had to be someone that I wasn't. Well, actually I needed to find the best of me,
be you.
Right. And make that come forward in my teaching. And it's terrifying, right? Because we all spend so long.
Yep.
We all spend so long, developing our scripts and our skills and, learning how to meet the criteria and achieve the competency. And, and because, the big training machine is got all these models and, this connection model, you've got to make sure you tick all the boxes, and the motivational cues, well, let's make sure we tick all the boxes. Like, I was like, well, I'm going to tick all of them, and I didn't realize that actually I needed to stop. What Rach really gave to me was like, you have all the tools, you've just got to stop trying.
This is the Group X podcast. It's very confronting to take a good look at yourself.
Yeah.
It's so confronting to have a look at you as a person and realize I'm either good at this or that is really shit and I need to change that. Or even not that, just taking a look and going, this is who I am. Okay. How about I just focus on being me? I know all these things because I've ticked all these boxes, but I just need to be me. Don't need to be anybody else. I said before, I don't want to be Nathan. I want to be Tony. Yeah. I'll have a little bit of Nathan thrown in there, a bit of splash. But at the same time, when you sit down and you are confronted with who am I? They're big. That's a really big self-awareness moment, but also a pivotal point in your career and what you're doing where you realize, oh, wow, I've just worked out my why.
Yeah, and look, I was really lucky. I did AIT, Advanced Instructor Training with Steve Clough, and that process really helped me, and I think that the discovering your why and your values, if you've done that program and you feel like your classes aren't gelling with you, revisit that content, because I remember undergoing that process and I didn't quite have it, and then it was actually the overnight period where I reflected and I really was like, well, why am I it was a bit like I had to come up with who I thought I was, and then I had to question why I thought that was the instructor that I wanted to be, and ask it 5 times. Well, why? And it actually came back to my reasons for loving Les Mills. I felt like I was celebrated for moving in a way that felt great.
Yep.
And Fitness First Deakin created that environment. I mean, don't get me wrong, the club is exceptional and it's amazing at doing that. The lighting helps.
Yes.
And the lighting and the sound system, right? But it's a community environment of, people who love group fitness, and you come along because we celebrate you as well. And I was like, wow, this place really makes me feel like I love to train. And, and getting all the benefits of training, well, obviously that assists with your confidence and all that stuff. But I was like, well, these classes are the thing that made me commit to fitness for life. I've tried weights and sports and a whole bunch of other training, and I've gone in and out of that. But the one thing that has made me commit to fitness for life has been Les Mills classes.
Yep.
And so I realized that I wanted to create the environment that made me commit to fitness for life.
Yep.
And so that one was an environment of community. It celebrated people for expressing themselves in a way that felt great. So they didn't have to, don't get me wrong, if you know me, I love a performance moment. But I don't want people to do that. I just want them to move in their way.
Yep.
That feels great for them, because that's what that freedom of expression is what makes our classes amazing.
Yeah.
And people come for different reasons. People might just, that freedom to train, I want them to feel the ability that, hey, this is a safe place where I can push my limit a bit.
Yep.
And feel safe, feel like if I get fatigued or make a choreography mistake, well, I'm going to be celebrated for having a go. You know? And so it really started to echo with me that, the way that I've been approaching my teaching is all wrong, and the person I'm trying to be is not me. Yep. And so that impacted my coaching, my voice, all the things that I was ticking boxes over.
Yep.
Was all wrong. And so I had to kind of, I did some deep thinking. And it's you know what, Tony, it's every day, every workshop.
I was about to say the same thing, that I think one of the most powerful things that instructors can do is self-assess, stick your video in the room, but also go to another instructor's class.
100%.
Stop instructing for a minute and go and participate. Go and be present in someone else's class and watch and be there, and just don't be one of those dicks that pre-cues everything, because fuck that. I hate that. I really hate that. Don't be that person, but go and just be there as a participant. Be connected to the person that's next to you, the people that are around you, and be there and do it. Don't be that instructor that's in class that does the, I know what's coming up, so I'm going to pre-cue because that's what Nathan's doing. So no. Be a participant, because it allows you to switch off from that stuff, but allows you to assess you as a person when you're in that space and that environment.
That 100%, Tony. And I reckon, just be in that, when you attend another person's class, go and just enjoy that moment, enjoy what they're providing.
If they fuck up the choreo, roll with it.
Yeah, totally. I'm going to get in trouble for this, but there's a few instructors that attend my classes, and they often do the preview and also the options too. And I'm like, it's really cute, but you don't have to do that.
Yeah, no. Just be a participant.
Yes.
Do what I'm coaching you to do. Just do that, please. You know, I love them. I love when instructors would come to my class, but at the same time, just do it. Yeah. Just be a participant. Don't be an instructor on a bike that's looking at me, or don't be an instructor hanging onto a pump bar looking at me. No, you don't need to. Just do what you got to do. What everyone else around you is doing. Don't draw attention to yourself. Yeah, you're not that person on stage at that point. You're just one of them. Be one of them.
100%.
Oh, I love it. No. Hey, you just told me why you teach, and I really gel with it. I think that's fantastic. What sort of advice or feedback would you give to someone that says to you, hey, how do I improve what I'm doing? How do I improve my training? How do I improve my instructing?
Video yourself and self-assess. That's a really powerful tool, but it will only take you so far. Sometimes some of the biggest shifts you kind of need to hear externally. So ask a friend and do it earnestly, or someone you admire. Reach out and be like, hey, I've filmed a track. I'd love for you to have a look at it if you had the time. And don't be upset if they say no, or if you haven't done, the next training on your pathway as well. So we recommend that instructors do advanced instructor training 6 to 9 months after they get certified and teach consistently. So after you've been teaching consistently for about 6 to 9 months, go and do an AIT. And honestly, AIT is like this deep dive, and if you don't cry in that module, I think you're doing it wrong.
Yep.
Really, there's a lot to unpack, and I'm still unpacking it, and that's that kind of every class, every week, every workshop kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Am I really aligned with my values? And if not, why not?
Yep.
If not, what can I do in this class, in this week, in this workshop to fix it? For instructors that are looking to improve, you've got to be open to it first. I think, attending workshops is essential. And then videoing, self-assessing, that is a really powerful tool to see what, the camera doesn't lie.
Yep.
If you're like, oh, do I sound like that? Yes. And
oh no, I don't.
The technique thing that you've picked up, I'm not really doing this thing. Well, fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say it takes over 1,000 repetitions to fix a habit. Well, that means participating. That means doing mirror work. That means lots of, time in the shower, bringing your fists to your hips. Make sure that your body attack set is perfect, and go and do other classes. If you're a body balance instructor, go and do some yoga.
Yeah.
If you're a body combat instructor, go and do a karate class.
Yep.
or a taekwondo class.
Yeah.
And kind of learn to love the discipline that you're trying to emulate.
Yep.
Or are emulating, and I think those things combined, you can't not grow. And if you're not growing, well, you're not asking for feedback, or you're not self-assessing effectively enough, because the entire team, trainer and presenter team, self-assess formally, quarterly, informally, weekly, monthly.
Yeah.
We are really committed to it, because even though you might be on the top of your game today, well, bad habits can creep in as well.
Hell yes.
Yeah. We all grow and we develop new cues, and a particular release will have a particular flavor or a new challenge as well. So what do you look like when you're teaching that challenge? Where can you go with this particular release? So
someone said it to me recently. I'm not sure who or where I heard it, but it was, if you're not self-assessing, you're guessing. Now, it's a silly little saying, but it's so damn true. If you're not self-assessing, you are guessing, thinking, oh yeah, I know what's going on. No. Get your self-assess as in, as we're saying, do the video, but also ask somebody else for some feedback. Take the good stuff, take the bad stuff, take it all on board. Don't sit down and have a boo-hoo because they said it was shit, but also don't choose the person that's going to tell you that everything was right. Oh yeah, you were perfect. It was fantastic.
Absolutely. If someone has no feedback for you, find someone else.
Go and have a chat to your mum if you want to find out you're okay, because she'll tell you you're fine. That's their job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant class, darling. Yeah, that was great. Fuck off. No, get someone that you know is going to be able to be critical, but is going to be able to also deliver feedback to you properly in the way that you need to understand it. I would say you don't necessarily want a friend that's there that's going to support you and go, oh mate, it's all right, you're okay. No, you want a friend that's there that's going to say to you, hey dude, that was shit. Maybe that's a bit harsh.
They're the best friends.
Brutal and honest friends is what you want. Brutal and honest people that are going to give you, because that's the only way you're going to grow.
100%.
Yeah? If I asked you to give me some feedback and you come up and said, "Oh, Tony, that was great," I'd go, "Yeah, thanks, whatever." Next, that's no disrespect at all. Yeah, we're mates, but at the same time, if you come up and said that to me, I'd go, "Really? I'm not awesome. What have you got? What is there that I did that and I would say some people giving feedback don't feel comfortable in being able to say, "Hey, Nathan, you're track 3. You did this. Have you thought about doing this?" Yeah. A lot of people don't have that confidence to be able to say that to a friend. Yeah. And I think that if we're going to give feedback, we need to be able to give it back properly, but also make sure that you're not having a go and you're going to tear that person down so they go home and they're bawling their eyes out and never want to teach class again. No. But give it in the right way. But also take it on board. Take it on board as well. Yeah.
Definitely. And I always say that if you don't believe it, just for a minute, pretend it's true. What would you do to fix what they've said if you don't think it's true?
Yep.
And would that help you?
Yeah.
Because it probably would.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they really recoil with feedback or they find it really difficult. And particularly unsolicited feedback, they might be like, "Oh, I wasn't expecting to hear that."
Yeah.
What, or they don't know what they're talking about. That's untrue.
Yep.
What if you pretended it was true? Could you come up with a lesson that would actually make you grow, regardless of their, feedback deliverer intentions? They might have ill intentions, but can you take a lesson anyway?
Yeah. And
grow in spite of their intentions?
Yep. This is the Group X podcast.
Yeah.
I think Group X managers these days need to have a little bit more, they need to have the skills to be able to assess anyway. But I believe a Group X manager doesn't need to be trained in every single format of every single program. A survey I did recently gave us 182 different programs. As a Group X manager, you do not need to know and be trained in 182 different programs in order to give feedback. Yeah, you don't need to have gone and done 500 hours of yoga training in order to give someone who's a yoga instructor feedback. The yoga instructor is probably going to tell you that, no, you can't give me feedback. Get off your high horse and take on board some feedback that you're given from your Group X manager. But Group X managers, you need to have the confidence to be able to give feedback, but give constructive feedback. And if you don't know how to do it, search it out. Go and find the courses that you can do. Go and get in contact with Les Mills or reach out to people that are Group X managers that know how to, or reach out to you guys in the trainer and presenter team. Hey, I want some help on giving feedback. Learn how to do it. It's a skill set that you need to learn. It's not something you just, hey, guess what? I'm a Group X manager. Yeah, I've got to do this now. And you have no idea. If you have no idea, reach out.
Absolutely. And, there are foundational skills in every class. It doesn't matter what class you teach or what classes are on your timetable.
Yeah.
There are foundational skills
Yep.
that support and underpin all instructing. So you shouldn't, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be trained in that discipline to provide it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, is there anything in the industry that you think needs to change?
Oh, how long have you got? No, I'm kidding. Where the market is really interesting at the moment, and I think that I feel like the instructor base is also degrading a little bit. I think that COVID really made people reassess
100%.
What they want out of life and what things are working for them and what things aren't. In terms of the industry, it'd be great to have more cover instructors. We've been talking for 20 years about instructor pay, right? And what's the best model for paying high performing instructors, and what does a high performing instructor do? You can have amazing instructors on the wrong time slot and their numbers won't perform as well as a peak time slot with a really average instructor.
Yep.
So I don't think we've ever really agreed as an industry what the measure of success is.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're 100% right.
The clubs obviously want retention, and that's important. And I think that that's a really important part of just the business, right? At the end of the day, we wouldn't exist if someone didn't pay us to show up, right?
Yep.
So we've got to listen to that, and numbers matter, It's funny, you see a difference between instructors who are really committed to the community, like those that spend extra time mentoring other instructors through their day 3 8-week journey. And that's unpaid work, right? It'd be really amazing to be able to value and remunerate people like that. But I also know that the businesses that pay us they're not thriving either.
Yeah. No, look, you're right with that. I agree that the rate of pay for Group X is something that we need to look at. There's something that we need to delve into as an industry and make sure that that is reflected correctly. I know that there are some instructors, and reading posts on forums and the Group X Instructors Australia Facebook group as well. There's some instructors that have been paid the same for the last 15 years that haven't had an increase. There's membership fees have gone up and everything else has gone up, but we've been sort of sit there not getting an increase in pay. I think that is vital. It's something that we need to look at, but I also think that group exercise needs to be given the attention that it deserves from the industry. I think that the focus that we've had for many years around getting the quick dollar, getting back in, here, PT, you put a PT on and they're going to pay you rent, or, let's get more members. Let's focus on all these sales consultants to get more members in the door. How about we focus on filling the holes in the bucket? How about we look at that as a focus and attention for this industry and go, okay, if Group X is firing properly and Group X is pumping on all cylinders, I'd say to you straight up, you can probably piss off half of your sales consultants because you don't need them. Because if Group X is working properly, Group X is going to be able to attract more members more often because people love working out in groups. I'm still frustrated at our industry that the fact that so many clubs just see Group X as an expense. Well, it doesn't give me any money. Well, hang on a second. Bullshit, it does. If you have, let's say, push in and say there's 2,000 people that attend Group X every week, and the stats show that they come in 3 times a week. Well, how many people are that are paying you money just to do really group exercise per week? That's a shit ton of money that's coming in every week. If you piss off those classes, you're likely to lose some of those members. Because you imagine if we had a timetable that was pumping, every time slot was pumping, you were making a whole lot of money because there were more members coming in. Would you be able to pay an instructor more money?
You would think so. And don't get me wrong, I am, I'm fortunate to be paid competitively.
Yep.
I do it for the love, very lucky to have a very stable, well-paid job outside of Group X. So I really do it for the love. Can you make a full-time job out of it? I'm not sure that many people do that.
Not these days. Not anymore.
They usually diversify. They might teach a few Group X classes, have PT business as well running. I don't think it's sustainable either.
No.
So really, you're right. It'd be amazing to see clubs value group exercise in the way that it really does support their business, because you're right, you can create a huge member magnet that attracts and retains a base that are paying you weekly, right? And if you don't invest in it, they won't come.
Yeah.
If you don't invest in it, they'll leave.
Yeah.
Because they're people like me when I was 19, looking for a place to fit in.
Yep.
Place
to belong, place to fit.
Right.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, those weights floors are not always that inviting.
Mate, they're not only are they not that inviting, they're not as motivating. People are motivated more when they're working out in a group with other people. It takes a very strong-minded, strong-willed person to go into a weights floor by themselves and train by themselves and be motivated to continue to train. More people, the stats show it, more people want to train with other people. More people are engaged more often when they're training with a group of people. Now, whether it's group exercise as we know it, or whether it's group exercise as like an F45 or a BFT or whatever it may be, or CrossFit, there's still a group of people exercising. So when I look at it, that's group exercise, not just what we do in Studio One or in the cycle studio or in the yoga plate or whatever it may be. It's a group of people exercising, and the more people we get moving, one, mental health, mental illness, and all that kind of stuff that they're talking about, which has been a big focus in our industry recently, all that stuff increases if we have group exercise working properly. All we need is the industry to look at it and give it the attention that it deserves properly. And I will say to you right now, thank you for coming on and being part of this and having this conversation with me, because it's all part of that movement as well. Having these chats and allowing instructors to hear your journey, but also hear what's happening in group exercise out there, as well as participants. I know there'll be participants out there that tune into these episodes and listen because, oh, wow, Nathan did a podcast. Yeah, okay, I'll have a listen. Yeah, we're talking about them as well because it affects them as well. Whenever someone tunes in to listen to these, there's that flow-on effect that is huge and is massive. So, mate, from me to you, thank you as well for being part of this, as I just said. It's been great to share your story and hear how you got into the industry and sort of what you're doing in the space as well, mate. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.